Hey Ferzad, welcome to the Mashable Outreach project. How are you doing?
Good, Siddharth. How's it going?
Let me just dive right into it, right? Voot sits out of a house which has a publishing arm, which is a network which does TV just as much as it does cinema, and Voot has a lot of international content on it apart from catch up. So, how ready were you when the pandemic hit, and what is it like to be launching right around the time that we're going to be entering into a lockdown and we were not aware of this? So, what was the whole scene like?
Yeah, so I think like you mentioned, I don't think anyone in the from in a long way was expecting this from any angle, and I think it took everyone by surprise. We've seen many challenges in the past. We've seen economic cycles and so on and so forth over many decades. But something like this, I don't think most of us would have seen in our lifetime. So this has truly been a challenging period. It's been a period of huge learning, I think, for the whole world, not just for us. And I think every industry, every single industry, uh, whichever one you look at across the entire universe, has had to sort of adapt, make changes, whether it's in the supply side, distribution side, manufacturing side, and it's been no different for us really as broadcasters, as OTT platforms, as content creators. In that sense, looking at newer ways to shoot, newer ways to edit, getting away from newer ways for narration, for example, a newer way to be having a chat with you. So it's all been unique, to say the least.
Because also, let's be honest, none of us were expecting for this to come about and in a manner that it would just halt everything that we were involved in.
While no one was really prepared for this, I think what stood our businesses in good stead has been the fact that pretty much all of it works on technology, right? The content, let's say the international content that you're referring to, comes in via the internet, and then gets QC'd and cleaned up and so on and so forth, and that entire process of mastering gets onto it. Uh, Instead of that being done in a studio, a lot of it was done in somebody's house remotely. And I think technology has really saved all of us in that sense, whether it's on editing of shows which were already shot or international shows which have been coming in. I think it's in some sense we were you know lucky. Lucky would be a harsh word to use at this point of time with something as crazy as the coronavirus flying around. But from a timing, from a launch perspective, we launched on the 2nd of March. And by the 16th or 17th of March, all of us were operating remotely and not going into the office. So that early into the life of a sort of tech product combined with a content product is a really challenging one. But we have a fantastically well experienced, phenomenal team who was able to pull all of it off. And the timing actually, from a business point of view, uh, sort of hit the spot because you had a lot more people spending a lot more time on entertainment services, and we were, like everyone else, the beneficiaries of that as well, and that still continues as we speak.
But speaking about the kind of viewership that you're talking about, does that mean there hasn't been no amount of revenue loss that Voot would have seen?
Look, we launched Voot Select on the 2nd of March, so it's very difficult to give you any comparison of how much have we grown in this period or not grown.
Yeah, as far as I can remember, I remember that I was sitting with Arshad doing the promotional rounds for Asur, and there's a show that we do called the Bombay Journey that I host. And while we'd sanitized the car and all the safety precautions were taken, we were still very cautious and we were scared. You know, every time somebody coughed, we would just be like, "What's happening?" Because it was just around the time that the country was hearing about the first cases. How and you launched in the peak before the whole chatter about OTTs for releases of the films or serials or any of those things kind of was spoken of. Who did premiere illegal in Riker case? So how do you then devise your marketing strategy when you know that we're in such a horrific time, which is there's no reference point to.
Yeah, so what really, the good part is that all of the content was ready. It was edited, it was mastered, it was QC'd because we were pretty much into launch, right? And we launched with Asur and Marzi. And even before things became far more clear than they did, in the third week of March, we got a phenomenal response to the content. And that has really driven subscriptions for us, in addition to a lot of the good international content that we have. Keep in mind, we also uh, drop our TV network content 24 hours before it goes on to television itself. So while there was fresh TV content, which was till the end of March, 30th or 31st of March, that saw a lot of traction as well. Um, I think where we were aided was that people had more time to check out a service like Voot Select. So what we would have otherwise done over a period of many months, we were able to do in the first 30 days. So while we had to completely change our marketing strategy because there was no outdoor involved and we had a significant outdoor plan, print went off the table. You were pretty much left with digital and television, right? And that's where we had to reorg ourselves completely and use a lot more of social media, a lot more of digital, and TV, of course, continued as is. But I think it was a bit of a catalyst for people to come and sample a new service much quicker than we would have otherwise seen a sort of an uptake. And that's really worked very well. It wouldn't have worked as well if the content was not appreciated, because at the heart of it, it's a content service, right? If you don't like the content, it doesn't matter how much of a time people have to spare. And I think that's therefore the content has really, really worked wonders for us.
I mean, kudos to that and congratulations. Actually, I should be thanking your team, the post producers, the writer cell that's probably writing a whole lot at this point, and the post producers or the editors who've pulled, or the colorists who pulled a punch at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a phenomenal team.
Firzad, it's very hard to discuss OTT and not talk about the whole theater versus OTT debate. And I think we could be wearing these nice clothes on top, but a lot of people are actually wearing boxes and then working, and it's almost become living at work, as a New York Times caricature said. So, do you think OTT will become habit, and do you think theaters can actually be replaced? Because for me, it's an experience. For me, it's about the popcorn. It's with the family. It's with the partner sometimes, or with the friends, and then I am in splits. But I want to know what you think about it.
In the music business, there's a saying called, which goes like this, which is that you cannot download the live experience. And that sort of, that whole debate came about saying, will people really go to concerts if everything's available on streaming and so on and so forth? So some wise person, said this line, which is, you can't download the live experience. And that's so true, right? There'll be a set of content in the feature space which people will necessarily want to go out and watch in cinemas, because it's a whole different experience. You're not really going only to watch the content. It's a family outing for most of this country, or it's a date for the youngsters, right? So there's a whole different experience associated with going to a cinema and watching, and I don't think that's going away once things return to normal. I think what you're seeing right now is a scenario where people are just plain scared to get out. Why just a cinema hall? I mean, are you going as much to the grocery shop as you used to pre-COVID? You're not, right? So that doesn't signal the death of the grocery shop. It's just that there's different ways of receiving a service, or in this case, the content. However, what I think it has done is it's sort of brought up a genre which until now was very sort of on the fence, that should an OTT platform buy this kind of a movie or should it not buy this kind of a movie? And that's really the smaller films, which may not have otherwise got as wide as a release. And as the OTT platforms grow in terms of number of subscribers and the penetration increases over a period of time, I think it's opened up a whole new avenue for a whole different kind of content, Because if you look at the economics today, to recover everything that you would have from theatrical, from a license fee that an OTT would pay you, for example, is tough. It's unlikely, unless some OTT throws some really crazy money at the producer. And I'm not saying that's not possible; it could happen, but those may be more the exceptions than the norm. But I think what it's done is it's given a whole set of content creators, whether it's writers, directors, cast, who may not necessarily be celebrated as yet from a theatrical experience or a theatrical draw point of view, to now have an opportunity to shine on on-demand platforms, premium on-demand platforms. And I think that's probably where a big change is about to come.
Which sort of brings me to the next question. Would you have, have you been pre-producing or prepping for projects that would have been greenlit or are in the process of hearing out scripts and kind of discussing how to go about a post-COVID shooting scenario or an unlock scenario as it's on right now?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, given the life cycle that we're at, we've dropped 4 originals so far. We'll have a 5th in July. We'll have a 6th in August. And that's just on the Hindi side. We have another 5 regional originals which are ready, and just final works happening on them on mastering and QC and the final post leg of it. While we do that, we're also in the process, obviously, of commissioning the new part of the slate, which is again at various stages of development. And that work is very much in process, and that's why when I started by saying it's very unique to have video call narrations with the writers and creative talent. It's more challenging for them, I would say, than for us, because they're literally talking into a device and trying to sort of get us to love what they're talking about. You don't get to build the personal energy that you can in a room. So it's a difficult one, and especially if you're looking at something that's not a serious crime thriller, and if it's a comedy, that half-second lag that you and I have while talking right now is a huge difference in the world of content.
We've spoken about the production process to an extent, but what are the significant changes that you think you're going to see on sets after COVID?
So, like I said, you need to divide it into periods of time. I think the next 9 to 12 months will be about contained kind of shoots. It's unlikely that outdoor shoots will scale up in a big way. It's unlikely. Getting permission to shoot in a market or things like that seems a bit distant from where we are right now, but of course everything can change very, very quickly. So I think the next 9 to 12 months will be about contained kind of shoots and production. Post that, I think it's back to business as usual. Though I think when you encounter an event like this for a prolonged period of time, it just necessarily changes the way content gets made and the kind of content that will eventually pop out. You're also going to, I'm pretty certain, see a lot of shows or films or short films or whatever it may be around COVID.
Ferzad, you also happen to be sitting out of one of the most popular and the big reputed houses of Indian industry. Has it happened that 2 parts? One, have you had more time to listen to more scripts and been open to kind of taking narrations and reading material which you wouldn't have had time to otherwise? And 2, how has Viacom or Voot sort of supported the industry and our daily wage workers or our support staff?
Yeah, of course. I think it's while we are doing our fair share of things, the entire industry has really come together, and that's something else. That's another sort of outcome of when you're put in a difficult situation such as this, you see industries coming together to support their own. So I think it's been good to see the community sort of come together and help out those in dire need. And I think we'll see that over the next few months as well, where people may get paid a little quicker than they would have otherwise, etc., to keep their own personal cash flows positive.
how have the production teams at your end kind of pivoted or done things differently? And do you have any anecdotes from this time to give us?
I have a couple which I can't publicly say, which are really interesting ones. Um, and especially at the initial periods, we were like, we have the content, it's ready, it's edited, everything's done, but it has to be ingested, right? And there's a lockdown. Now, how how do you get out and ingest it? Um, but like I said, the team is super experienced, and they found uh, really smart ways of getting it done. In a lot of cases, it was very heartening to see colleagues literally risk themselves and get out of the first instance of that they were allowed as per government rules. And that was a really trying time, but I think we came through that uh, pretty smooth.
But tell me this: there is tipping point, there is Viacom, there is Voot. How does the system then fit in? How do they contribute to each other? What are your learnings, unlearnings, and how is it being in the office at such a scenario where there is a plethora of content coming from all across the floor or all across multiple floors?
No, of course it is, because the advantage of a network such as ours is that you have broadcast, you have digital. In digital, you have um, the AVOD business, you have the premium subscription business, uh, and you have a very strong, credible studio business, which is the Viacom 18 Studios, which has an arm called Tipping Point. And they're of course developing a lot of stuff for us as we speak. We have some of their stuff already on the platform, and that's very advantageous. It's not to say that they will create content only for us, because that's not the business model of a studio. Even if you look at it globally, every studio produces for multiple networks, and that's really a whole separate business. But yes, being in the same building and being part of the same company, you're likely to get a sort of a first look, potentially. So it is very advantageous, but not so much from a first look perspective, because you have a very strong content creator in the building.
So, for the users watching this, and for my understanding as well, you have both an AVOD, which is advertising video on demand, and you have an SVOD, which is subscription video on demand, and you have them both inside the single sort of a wireframe. How then does it differentiate for the audiences for you? I mean, how do you demarcate it very clearly, and how does it make a difference for you as a creator or internal stakeholders? And how do you guys go about producing or slotting that content, and where what goes, or where what will go?
That's a good question. I think it starts off with a user's intent, right? It starts off on the kind of offering. If you have the same offering which is behind the paywall and available for free, nobody's really going to pay for it. So one is the differentiation in what you really offer behind the paywall, especially in a scenario such as ours, or most of the homegrown sort of services which have the AVOD and SVOD on the same app, and it's another layer built. Um, so the content offering is different. There's a set of discerning customers who are willing to pay for content today, for good quality content. And that's the section that will subscribe, whether it's to us or to any other premium subscription app. Uh, then there's a set of audiences who will continue to consume things for free for one of two reasons. One is they don't want to pay, and they haven't sort of gotten used to paying for content as yet, and that's a large section of the audience. Or they don't find any value in what you have to offer behind the paywall. So there's two reasons that broadly that customers would not pay you, and that's really the differentiation. It's largely in the kind of customer or viewer, as the case may be. Uh, my sense is, as time progresses and as the premium subscription offerings roll out even more content, better content, because it's very, very nascent. Everyone's still finding their feet, and everyone's doing actually a good job putting out good quality content to build the habit with the consumer, and it's a whole different kind of content. I think as we go along and all of us produce a lot more content, which more and more people consume, get to watch, and with things like free trials, and once you watch quality of content of a particular quality, you don't it just gets into you. You don't want to go back to consuming something else, right? So the onus is really on us to put out that good quality content so that people can open their wallets to us, to sort of pay for us.
I also happened to see something interesting and what seems to be a crossover for me. And Kush has also been a friend. So, what is the agenda behind kind of bringing that sort of content onto an OTT, and what brings about the dynamism in kind of taking the call of creating such content? Because it's beautiful content. She's challenging people. You're getting UGC, and you're having fun. Overall, I mean, the audiences and the creators. So, what is the strategy behind that?
Yeah, see, that again comes from a need, right? When you're in a scenario where you can't really go out and shoot, this is the kind of unique content and good content that really pops up to keep the audiences engaged, right? Because you have a scenario where people come to you to consume largely network content on the AVOD side, right? Largely catch up. And if that content isn't coming in, then you need to sort of reinvent yourself to keep consumers engaged and on the platform. So that was one such attempt.
Are there any unique such sort of experiments that you guys are going to be taking up in the future as well?
We haven't really announced too much of it as yet, but what we're doing right now for Voot Select is we're in the process of shooting an entire series at home. It's shot by the cast or their family members, operating as DOPs and so on and so forth. It's a pretty challenging one to do, but it's a very, very good story, and we felt it needed to be told.
All right, Ferzad, I think it was a great time talking to you and understanding the dynamics of the OTT space and where it is headed, and especially when we discuss it from a Voot Select point of view, which has a very, very diverse set of businesses operating around it. Would you like to add anything about the ethos of the company and how you guys have sort of pivoted during this time, and what can we look forward to?
Yeah, no, I think for us, we've been very, very clear, Siddharth. I think we're focused on, we've never wanted to be a content factory, which is just, doling out any kind of content. So I think, and maybe sometimes we're guilty of it, but the amount of time that we spend on getting a story right, at least to our satisfaction, or what we believe is right, of course, the audience eventually judges whether it's right or not, is disproportionate. We'll make quite a few original pieces of content, but I think we're very focused on putting out something that's really, really good, because if you're making 15 or 20 a year, they had better stand out, right? Versus some other platforms which may be doing multiples of that, but would not really, cut through clutter and be of a particular storytelling level. So that's just our philosophy, and which is why our tagline is also made for stories. Because for us, the story comes first. Everything else is really secondary. And most people would say that, but we genuinely follow through with that.
I mean, kudos to that. And Riker case, illegal, Marzi, I haven't seen, an Asur having your breakout shows within the launch is awesome. Congratulations to the whole team.
Thank you.
And I think it's true. I mean, I call myself the storyteller India. So stories at the core are what India really goes about rooting for. So let's see. I'm looking forward to the kind of content that Voot Select
Glad you
has to
like
offer.
them. Glad you like them. Great talking to you, Sid. Yeah.
It was really nice talking to you as well, Ferzad. I think the Mashable outreach will continue to give our users stories and future predictions, or how businesses are going to survive, and help businesses out in the way they can pivot in a post-COVID scenario to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Mashable India.